Talofa lava, everyone. Welcome back to Breaking Waves for another episode. Very special guest today. We're going to have a very fun episode today. He has a wealth of knowledge, amazing work experience, very passionate about community, and he is on a mission to help people unleash their greatness. Thank you so much and welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. Look, this has been a long time coming, but we finally made it.
Yes.
And I'm excited to be here. You guys have an awesome show, and so I'm very privileged.
Thank you for joining us. I am so honored to host you here at Breaking Waves. You know our show, it's always about deep and meaningful topics, or sometimes on the controversy of things, but don't want to go there today too much. So we'll keep it lighthearted today and also getting to know a lot about what you're doing now. Tell us about yourself. What are you doing for work?
Yeah, sure. I mean, hey, we won't go controversial, but we'll be realistic.
Yes,
and I'll be as real as possible, and I'm just here to provide and add value to your audience and here to serve. About myself, I'm a Christian, so I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm a husband to my wife, Sandra Eve Haufano, and I'm also a father to 3 beautiful children, and I'm also a business owner as well.
Tell us about your business.
Okay, I've got 3 businesses that me and my wife have between us, but our bread and butter I'll talk about is Zeducation. So Zeducation, so education with the Z. People do say Z education, but we like to say Zeducation. But anyway, Zeducation, basically, it's in the name. It's about education, and we work with businesses to upskill their staff. Whether that's leadership, diversity, financial literacy, digital literacy, and well-being. But also, Hannah, we also work within the community as well. So not just in the workplace, but also in the community. So that's when we partner up with like government. So the Ministry for Pacific People, the Ministry of Social Development, whether that's helping people get into jobs or helping people get into homes, whether that's in business or community, the engine and the magic is the same. It's education and it's training as part of the solution. So in a nutshell, so look, we're very grateful to have an awesome team. We've just hired 2 people recently, facilitators.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, a huge thanks to my wife. You know, it's not easy to find, good facilitators in that, although there's a lot. And she's, in fact, onboarding them on today. So
that's so cool.
I might be able to make it back to Pukekohe and see them before they shoot off. But anyway, look. That's the space we're in. We love that. And this business, I always tell people, started because of my parents. You know, I'm of Samoan and Tongan descent. You know, my dad and mum migrated to New Zealand in the 80s. They never knew each other before that, but they met each other in a carpet factory out in Onehunga. And then my dad worked his magic, 7 children later. But they always drilled into us kids, Hannah, growing up, all 7 children. Education, education, education. And that's ironic because it came from parents who were high school dropouts. They had no qualifications whatsoever. But in their mind, they believed in this thing called education. And that's what they drilled into us. And they said education will lead to a better future, better jobs, and you provide for your future family. So that was the perspective. So I grew up with that mentality. But then, I'll be honest with you, I struggled in school. In primary school, English and maths and writing, I just struggled with it. I remember being taken out of class during reading and writing away from all the other children to get one-on-one support. Although it was a good thing, but as a young kid, I was like, something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me, you know? And so I took that lack of confidence with me into like intermediate, high school, and I purposely avoided subjects like English and maths, and I thought, oh, that's for the smart kids. I'll do the easy one like design and graphics.
Or there's probably smart kids being like, that's hard.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll take that back.
Yeah.
Even smart kids can do graphics. But for me, in my mind, at the time, that was easier than English and maths.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so I ended up getting into Unitech. Thank you, Unitech, for taking a chance on me. My best mate, Jimmy, just graduated there recently, but it's a different story. Published on the news by
Congratulations,
staff. Jimmy. But anyway, I did a product design degree And it should have taken me 3 years, but it took me 4.5 years. I just struggled. I wasn't ready for it, to be honest. And then I went overseas on a church mission, and for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and so I served the mission in Texas. And so in that in itself is also like education from a religious perspective. You're studying the scriptures, you're teaching people how to improve their lives, live better lives with the knowledge from the scriptures. And I really loved that. And so I came back home from my mission to New Zealand, did a master's in marketing, and then no one would hire me after that. I was applying for marketing jobs, but no one would hire me. But that's a different story. I created my own little marketing agency there. Then I work in corporate, in sales for different companies, but on the side, I'll do contracting work and teaching. So I'll work for like Te Wangara Aotearoa and different providers, teaching business and leadership programs with Māori Pacifica values. And then one day I was like, I'm going to go off and do my own thing. And that's when I left the corporate space and all of that and went all in into the training space.
Yeah.
And that's where Zeducation came about. But, that's the long version of what I'm trying to say here is that it all started from my parents and how they raised us. And Zeducation wouldn't be there if it wasn't for that.
Yeah.
And how I was raised.
Were there any kind of like defining experiences? I know you've mentioned your parents drilling that into you. Any defining experiences in your, younger life that has led to where you are today?
It's a good question. Jump in the time machine there and go back to when I was a young kid. Defining moments. What should I talk about there?
If you don't, that's totally fine.
No, it's a great question. It's just I've never thought about it before.
Yeah.
In terms of which defining moments. I just remember as a kid, like whenever I would get upset, and the thing that I would say to try to get back at my parents is like, "Nah, I'm not going to go to school anymore," because I knew that's what they loved. And they were passionate about us getting an education. And we didn't have much, like, as kids. Like, I think that's what drove me a lot, is seeing how much my parents invested in us. My parents, we rarely saw both of our parents at the same time because Dad worked full-time night shift and Mum worked full-time day shift. So we only had one or the other.
Oh, wow.
Right? They had to do that in order to provide for 7 children.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a family, and let's be honest, there were times where they couldn't pay the bills on time, and there were times we had cold showers. And my parents always kept candles around the house because it was quite common that we had no electricity because they didn't pay the bill on time, and so we just like candles. But as kids, we just grew up and we got used to it. Like we didn't know any better, right? And there were times where we'll go to school and like probably not, we wouldn't have lunch, but at least my parents promised us like, hey, no lunch today, but when you come home from school, we're going to have a nice dinner. I was like, oh, there was something to get us excited. But I saw that my parents sacrifice and, they invested a lot to make sure that us children had a good education. And because of that, I didn't want to disappoint them. And so a big part of my drive that helped define or motivate what I do today was education, is making my parents proud.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And that's the island way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not just doing it for me, I'm doing it for my family.
It's always more than just us. It's always a bigger picture to when we work and when we serve, especially towards our families.
Yeah. When I became a father, that added a different meaning behind why I do what I do. When I got married, I was recently married, and I graduated with a master's degree, and that's the first time I've ever gained a degree while being married. And I remember during the graduation ceremony, the chancellor that got us to stand up, look at our family, look for them, and then give them an applaud. And, that was the peak of the ceremony. And I stood up and I saw my wife in the crowd, and we just locked eyes. And just in that moment, it was very emotional for both her and me. And it felt like she could read my mind. And I was like, I did this for us. I did this. This is for us. And she was pregnant with our first child. And for me, that's when education and everything I did was like, it was more than just me and my mum, my dad in that. It's like, it's for my future prosperity as well. So that was a different level of motivation.
Yeah, having a kid, eh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that changes your life. Like, I think I talked about it on when I came onto your podcast, how how the shift of having a child and needing to mature, having to provide, and at the time when I was pregnant, I was like, oh, my life's over. But then randomly, when I gave birth, mother mode came on. I
Right.
don't know what it's called. Maybe mothers out there could help identify this. You just switch and you become like provider. You have to find money, food. Who do you want to be? Like your child seeing you grow up, so that they can adapt the same principles, values, and morals that you have. And it's a test, eh? It's a test on your spirit, test on your faith. But it's such a beautiful experience. I talked about this on the podcast that I enjoy being in the midst of challenges. It's fun for me, and it's such a good place to grow. And I'm sure you're very similar, because you're very focused, you're motivated, and tell us about that, because I read books, I listen to podcasts. I have to keep brainwashing my mind to think positively. What is your kind of like mindset routine?
Ooh, interesting question. But I must say before I share that, I love watching your content, following you. You know, it's not easy to be in your space, especially on social media, open to the public eye. But you know, people don't realize behind the camera or behind what you do, you've got a life, you've got a family, there's challenges, but still you keep showing up.
Yes,
and
yes.
you keep serving. And I love that.
Thank you.
In terms of mindset,
Your mindset routine.
yeah, I guess, well, for me, yeah, there are some things that I do in my day-to-day to help make sure my mindset's sharp, but I always come back to also like my perspectives that I carry with me into like challenges, into life, whether it's business, family, etc. I'll use this example of when we had our first child, my daughter, Alosia, she was about 2 years old, just a toddling around. And we were in the living room and I just finished cleaning the house. And I was like, yeah, you know, I felt pretty proud, you know, I cleaned the house, it's nice and tidy. And I went to sit down and relax. But my daughter has this thing where she just goes up to the TV cabinet, opens up the drawer, everything that's in there comes flying out, right? And she did exactly that, you know, after I had finished cleaning and I was sitting next to my wife. And my daughter came there, opened the drawer, threw it all out. And my first reaction, and I'm not proud of it at the time, but I went, hey! I raised my voice like, hey! You know, because I just finished cleaning up. But that was my reaction. And then my wife, in her most gentle tone of voice, turned to me and she goes, sweetheart, she's just a child. She's learning. And I had to step back and, because there are two people there, me and my wife, looking at the same child, the same situation, but we saw something different perspective. All I could focus on was the mess, all my wife could see was a child that's learning.
Wow.
And for me, that was an eye-opener, because like, you know, when life challenges come, you know, we could choose to focus on the mess or we could choose to focus on the learning. And so that's always my perspective and my mindset. When challenges come my way, I always ask myself, what can I learn? And there's been moments in my business where have not made the best decision. I thought it was good, and then the consequences that came from it, backlashes or comments or things like that, and like, cool, I step back and I go, what can I learn from this? And just like you, Hana, I love challenges. There's just something about it.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to prove that I can overcome this, because there's going to be an awesome story to tell when I do.
Absolutely.
You know? And that's all about the learning. And also my other perspective, Hana, what drives me is all of us are going to end up in the same place. We're all going to end up in a coffin. Like, no one's going to live forever here. Like, we're all going to, you know? So it's like, for me, if that's the case and that's the reality, what can I do now while I'm here to make the world a better place? What can I pass on to make the next generation better? And that's why I'm passionate about what I do, especially with Zeducation. When we're training people, especially for our people, they're going to go home and pass that knowledge on. You know, because of mum and dad who learned something or learned a different perspective or learned a new skill. Now they're going to pass that on, and it's going to better their family in generations and generations to come. Okay? And that's how I look at things, and this is why I'm passionate about creating content, podcasts, and that, because I know I'm not going to last forever. But what's going to be around forever is what I leave behind, and that's the content. And I hope that generations or my future or anybody that looks back on the content can find it useful and valuable and improve their life.
I'm so glad that you spoke about that. I'm so glad, because in the content space, there's a lot of perceptions of people who create content regularly. It's like, oh, they just want clout, they want to be famous, it's the recognition, they want their ego fed, validation, whatever it is, right? And I'm so glad that you've highlighted that it's more than that. And honestly, if me and you were both chasing it for those reasons, I don't think we'd be very good creators, right? Because it's rooted in purpose, not so much about how many people follow or like. It's online, it's accessible, and in some sense, it's like a ministry. It's people can go into it to watch and learn, and it's neat in their time. I know for my episodes that I've done in the past, what makes me happy is one person coming on saying, this has changed my life. And I've gotten it so many times. One woman said she was going through a depressive episode after watching one of the episodes I did with another woman. She said it brought back life into her. She went back to church, started going back to work again and looking after her family. Another guy from the Humble video, he shared it pretty interesting. He sent me an email and he said, thank you so much for sharing that opinion, because I know a lot of our people got offended. I hope you're okay. But that was a wake-up call for me, because he was living quite well in another country, but he had no interest to go back home to look after his family in Samoa. And a lot of his family was living there. So he said that in one of his dreams, probably laugh at this, in his dreams, the quote, Samoans in New Zealand need to be humbled, it reaffirmed to him his purpose in life. So these small experiences is what keeps me going. I don't need to have 1 million people, saying, oh yeah, we like her and that. But if it changes one person's life, that's success to me. And I'm so glad that you shared that.
Yeah. And that's what drives me as well. I mean, I've had people before, like when I started earlier, they said, well, so Zeducation is a podcast. Zeducation is a workplace training provider, community provider. And you ask, like, why do you guys need a podcast? Because no other training provider has a podcast. Why do you guys need one? And the reason why we started the podcast is because our students, when they do these programs, they're like, Pasi, what's next? What's next? We want to do more. And then also the other fold is learning is a lifelong journey, not a one-day workshop or 10-week drive-through or 3-year degree. Like, learning is forever. So providing a platform where people can still come back and keep learning and growing, just like what you've shared, is what it's all about. One experience that we've had, I've had this guest on, and he's an expert and does a lot of work in the Māori and Pacific space when it comes to sexual abuse. Very sensitive topic, right? But like, I created a platform where I was able to have that conversation, taboo topic, very sensitive, but in a more neutral and safe space, Talanoa style. And that's my goal. That first episode, we did 2 interviews together. The first one, over a year ago, 7 people listened to that podcast and reached out for help.
Wow.
Because of past trauma related to that. 7 people.
That's beautiful.
Then the second interview that we did, similar topic and theme, he called me and goes, Pasi, I had someone call me from the hospital after listening to our podcast asking for help. And he was in hospital because, he attempted. And so, like, even though it's a bittersweet thing, but you can see the impact.
Yes.
I'm not changing millions of people's lives, but just like you, if it's changing one life, that's what it's all about. And that's what keeps me going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that requires humility, because you're not here to save the world. You're here to use your own abilities, the skills and gifts that God has given you to do the best that you can, right? We're not here to save the world, guys. We're here to do the best that we can. And so beautiful that you share those experiences. See, those are the things that matter, right? And I feel like Pacific content is so untapped. Like, I've said this before as well. If you go to like Bailangi podcast, they'll have a psychology, sociology podcast about everything. With our Pacific community. It's not we don't have a wider range as Palangi do, or other cultures do, I guess. So it's good that, you know, Zeducation is coming through with a podcast, and there's no need to like compete or anything, because there's so much opportunity.
100%. And the reason why I love a podcast platform, especially if you do it properly and you do it right, is you create a platform where you can invite Pacifica or Māori on and give them a spotlight. And then, you know, ask them amazing questions so they can talk and share, you know, about their stuff. And then, you know, it gives them an awareness around who they are and their work, you know, and it leads to more opportunities for them. And on the other side, because we're not just, our podcast not limited just to Pacific and Māori, is we have other people come onto the podcast. And my goal is to take what they have and make that knowledge accessible for our people.
Beautiful.
So I break it down and be like, tell us your story, tell us your skills.
Yeah.
How can we apply that? And then I turn to our audience and are like, from a Pacific and Māori perspective, this is how it can relate. You know? So that's the beauty of having a platform like that. And then, that's why I keep doing it.
Podcasts are so important. Very good. It's a very good marketing technique to have it in-house. You can cut up the clips as well. Just look from a commercial perspective. Cut up those clips and push them out. And also, it gives people trust. They want to know who they're buying from. If they see you, oh, this is the type of conversations this guy's having. This is who he's talking to. Okay, he looks like something I can trust. Which is far better than a graphic of you going.
And honestly, and I tell this is why I love it when it comes to our Māori and Pacifica people.
Yeah.
Because talanoa and kōrero should feel natural.
Yes.
And it can feel strange when you've got all these lights and cameras in your face. It's like, I'm not used to this stuff. But, you know, if you have a good host who's able to like facilitate it in a way where it does feel like a talanoa, then it does really bring out the best for our people. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a whole skill itself, eh? Tell us about how, when you first started your episode and how you've grown, like, as a host.
Oh my goodness. Where do I start? When I first started off, it was on Zoom, and it was, when I look back, I was like, oh man, it's a huge improvement with the production and quality now.
Yeah.
But, and I started with my brother Kalolo, who's moved on with his business. He's very entrepreneurial as well. Funny, because we don't really come from an entrepreneurial family. But yeah, interesting enough. It was just on Zoom, and we're just talking about topics related to our space. And then from there, my mindset was, let's just start. Even though it sucks, let's just start. And then each episode, we just keep getting better and better. And then finally, people said yes to come onto our podcast. And then here we are. I've interviewed, I think I've just released my 85th episode last week.
Malo.
So I've grown a lot. And my favorite thing about interviewing all these diverse people is that you learn.
Yes.
Because you ask questions and they tell you all these things and share their knowledge. And it's like, whoa, never, you know? And because of that, I feel like the next episode or conversation I have gets better. Because I feel like I'm getting smarter after every conversation.
Exactly.
Or episode.
And you have a better way to angle different things, different questions to your guests.
Yes.
That's so awesome. Congratulations on your podcast.
Cool,
I'm so glad on your growth on this. And I'm so glad more Pacific people are getting into podcasting. Hey, have you signed up with BlueNet yet? No? Well, let's fix that. Head over to www.bluenet.co.nz and hit Join Us today. All you need to do is fill in your name, date of birth, phone number, and a few other details. This helps us get you set up faster. We'll also need a photo of your ONT serial number and your modem. Not sure what an ONT is? Don't worry, this is what it looks like, and every house with internet has one. And make sure you have a valid ID and a utility bill or government letter to confirm your address. When you join BlueNet, you're not just getting fast, stable internet. You're also supporting shows like Tautaiae, Breaking Waves, and Sports Salanoa. Your BlueNet subscription helps us bring you more content. If you sign up this month, you get $10 off your first 3 months. If you have any questions, call 0800 258 638. Join BlueNet today. I just hope it comes with purpose, with not those whaikakala podcasts. Nah, I'm kidding. Do what you want. I'm not the
There
judge.
could be an audience for it.
There is
Who
always
love that
an
stuff.
audience for whaikakala
Yeah.
stuff. But I know when I came on your podcast, you're very big on faith and spirituality. And I know you're a member of the Latter-day Saints. Tell us about that. Like, how does that play a role into who you are now?
Yeah, look, like I said, like when I first started off, I introduced myself as a Christian first because God comes first in my life. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't have what I have today. I wouldn't have my family, wouldn't have met my wife, etc., etc. When I'm thinking about business, I always think about Heavenly Father's children. So, when I'm serving or teaching students, I don't just see them as a student. I see them as a child of God. It's like, and before we go in there and serve them, there's always a prayer and there's always a question around Heavenly Father, how can we serve your children better? Help us use our talents, our resources to be able to achieve and do your work. That's the perspective. And then I just feel like when you lead with that, when you lead with those values and that belief, I feel like it just feels natural to do business. I mean, that's what we call it. The shell is the business, but everything within it is very value-based driven. And so, yeah, I mean, like, always start the day with prayer, reading your scriptures, and then yeah, that sets a good tone for your day and everything else that you do.
What was the defining moment when you realized God is real?
All right, we're going to go there. I love that. And I love that's a question that you can ask on your podcast. There's been many moments, experiences, spiritual experiences. I'll probably go to when I was a kid. We were at Maraetai, and it was a family holiday. And I was swimming in the water. I didn't know how to swim. Couldn't swim. So I just remember hugging this beach ball, just floating. But what I couldn't control was the current. And it was just taking me further and further away from the shore. And I just remember my dad, I think it was my dad who called out to everyone, come back, we're going to have lunch now, And I couldn't because I was just holding on to this ball of my life. And I panicked. And what I did was I let the ball go and I started drowning. I just started drowning. And I was scared. I thought, oh, this is over. It's gone. In my mind as a child, like, I knew this was the end or something. I was scared. Then my dad, out of nowhere, with his hairy forearm, just like mine here, almost like Superman, punched the ceiling of the ocean above me, pulled me out of the water, and just pulled me out like Superman. And so in that moment, as a kid, I kind of experienced and realized what death would feel like. I'm going to die, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And then what saving feels like when my dad pulled me out. And I just remember going home that day, and it was nighttime. I was traumatized because I couldn't go to sleep. And all I could think, and it was replaying over and over and over in my head, was me. I almost died, but my dad saved me. And I just remember feeling grateful as a child. And it felt like I was talking to someone. And I was like, staring at the ceiling, and I said, thank you for my dad. Thank you for my dad. Thank you. And I said that over and over again until I fell asleep. But fast forward to when I'm an adult and I reflect back on those experiences, and I feel like, God's wanting me to remember or learn something. It takes me back to those moments in the past and be like, that was me that was talking to you.
God works in amazing ways, eh?
Yeah.
He works in really good ways. So speaking of that, there's always that conflict between spirituality and our culture, and then religion comes into play. Tell me about, because you're passionate about our Pacifica cultures and Māori people as well. Are you on any journey to explore like your ancestral history or your family history and getting to be more culturally literate or anything like that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if we think about the generation before us, speaking your language wasn't encouraged, because it was the English or the Balangi language and way of things that will get you further in life. And so, for a lot of people, especially my generation, who might feel like they need to play catch up because of the ripple effect that happened from them. But I don't really see it as catch up. Just embrace every moment, every chance you get to learn the culture. There is no perfect level about it. But don't be shy. Don't be shy to explore it and have fun. Have fun and enjoy it. Because it's beautiful. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they're really huge on family history. So they've got a huge database of genealogy.
Wow.
And so, and you've got to put work into it to build your family tree.
Yeah.
So find my granddad, his parents, and great-great-parents, so on, and so on my mother and father's side. And it's so cool to go back, and I ask questions. I go, Mum, or I ask my grandma, who was your father? Is this? So, yeah, that's my grandfather. How did you know? Oh, it's the history, the family history there. Someone's put it together and connected the dots. Can you tell me a story? And sometimes we'll just sit there and our nana will just tell us a story. Tell us a story about her parents and how she grew up and how life was tough and why she made the decisions she did. And then that makes me go, oh, so that's how my mum thing. And then, and then, so sometimes it's just being very curious and asking questions about your stories and who that person was. Because for Māori people, that's what they call whakapapa.
Yeah.
When they look back and see, and acknowledge those who came before them, because it helps them, with their identity and who they are today. And also coming back to what I said before about like we're all gonna die, and it's like what kind of legacy you want to leave behind for the next generation, and you want to make sure that the tree keeps getting better. So look, I love my culture. It's beautiful. Like I said, I'm Tongan and Samoan. I had the opportunity to go to Samoa for the first time a year ago. Beautiful. And you talked about culture and religion and faith. Even though I was in Samoa, what made me feel more at home was seeing all the churches, the chapels in every village.
Beautiful chapels, eh?
Beautiful. You drive past every village, there's a church, Catholic, LDS, like there's different. It's like, and what made it feel at home was God. God. So for me, like no matter what color, no matter how old you are, no matter where you're from, what sometimes unites us is our faith and our beliefs. So look, it's beautiful, and I'm enjoying the journey.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so happy for you. And you're right, Samoa, I want to go back and live one day. One day.
Man.
Yeah.
I want to go back. All right.
Yeah. But since you do a lot of workshops and you work with upskilling people, what's your advice for someone who is wanting to further get into education, but is kind of a bit anxious that they won't achieve schooling or whatever it might be? What's your advice for them?
Well, since we just talked about faith and God and religious, from a faith point of view, just remember who you are as a child of God. And no matter what challenge, no matter what tribulation comes your way, that's nothing compared to who you are as a person, right? Like, because you're a child of God, you have so much potential. You are put here on earth to grow, to learn. So part of education, education is part of our purpose here, because the proper education should lead to better growth and opportunities for us. But that's our responsibility. No one's going to put it on your lap and be like, here you go, right? I had that wrong mindset, especially when I worked in corporate, and I was like, hey, it's not fair, all these people are getting opportunities, they've got mentors and that. I'm this island guy and there's no one here for me. Like, I want someone to be like, oh, Pasi, try this out. Or, hey, Pasi, come with me and learn this or shadow. But I had to change that mindset because it wasn't helping or serving me, right? So, and that's how I ended up becoming an entrepreneur. So I'll be like, cool, like, what can I do for myself? And because of that, and I think when it comes to education, like for me, like I talked about earlier, I lacked a lot of confidence. But I held on to the belief that education would lead to a better future and opportunities because of my parents. And so I never gave up just because of that. And then education has unlocked so much doors. I wouldn't have the business today if it wasn't for education.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't take up those education opportunities. And the cool thing about if you do go to like university or something like that, make friends, like network with people. Like there's so much. It's not just about sitting there and taking a lecture and passing assessments. It's about the community.
Yeah.
There, you know, making friends, etc. So, yeah, look, there's so much. I could talk about this all day, but I definitely encourage get educated, get a qualification, because having one is better than not having one, and it can lead to better job opportunities, etc. Because a lot of employers, even though they say it doesn't really matter, a lot of people are saying that qualifications in that do give you an advantage.
I wanted to touch on what you said about confidence, building confidence. What were the steps that you took to build your confidence?
Well, I wouldn't claim to be a very confident guy. I mean,
Well, more
I think
confident than you were before.
I think confidence is like a muscle, and the more you train it, the better it becomes. And so, how you train confidence, and it sounds ironic, is get out of your comfort zone. You can't get confidence in your comfort zone. You get confidence from playing in the uncomfortable area, and then come back to your comfort zone, and then go back out and get uncomfortable, and come back and be, in your comfort space. But I think, taking up those challenges, like, if it's like, my podcast, people used to invite me in that or to guest speak, I'd feel nervous, feel so nervous, but I'll do it anyway, because I knew I will get better after it.
Yeah.
Right? But I think what can help you, especially like me, I got invited to speak in Wellington at a conference that was hosted by the Retirement Commission. And there was a lot of people from the bank and financial sectors and government. MPP was there, one of our clients. And I had to talk about Zeducation in our work. I was nervous. But what I did, was I prepared. What works for me might be a little bit different for you, but practice, wrote up my speech and I practiced it over and over and over again. And when a couple of seconds before I got on stage, I was still nervous.
I love that.
I was still nervous. But once I got up there, it was just like I hit the play button and everything I practiced just took over. Right? And I've had John Pulu, I asked him the same question on the podcast. How do you do it, man? Like, you just look so confident. And he said the same thing. Practice, practice, practice. The 3 Ps. 3 Ps. And I think about confidence is, or if you're not feeling confident, it's not a bad thing. It's just a sign, right? But like, cool, if I'm not confident, what can I do? But I watch a lot of Tony Robbins as well, and he always talks about your physiology affects your psychology.
Yeah.
So he talks about like sitting up properly, because that helps improve. Yeah, because if you're sitting like this, slouch.
That's just how I was
How do you think your brain's going to respond
true.
to that, right? But if you're like this, you almost feel like Superman.
Yeah.
Right?
Instead of straight down.
Yeah. But so I mean, there's little tips and techniques that we teach our students to help them build confidence, like how to be assertive. And it's interesting, especially when we talk about our Pacifica people. One of the things that hold them back, what we've learned from the work that we're doing, what holds Pacifica people back from taking on more leadership roles, more responsibilities, more challenges, is that they lack confidence, right? And they lack communication skills, right? So one of the things the barriers that we've been able to push through with the help of teaching them how to be assertive, and we say, look, there's a difference between being passive and being humble. Don't confuse being humble as a weakness.
Yeah.
Like being passive, passive is someone who says yes, or is a people pleaser. And they feel guilty saying no. That's why they say yes all the time. Just a people pleaser. That's not being humble. That's different.
Yeah.
Being assertive, you can still be humble and assertive at the same time. You can still be respectful. You can still be direct. You can still be clear.
Yeah.
You can still be confident, right? Don't confuse confidence with being egotistic or prideful. Don't cut down someone, you know, who does that. So that's what you teach our people. Man, honestly, you should see, once they learn how to be assertive and we teach them how to do that, they're off running.
Yeah.
And the confidence just comes.
Absolutely. And I think our strength as a people is humility, because that's ingrained to us from a young age, whether it's doing the fe'aus, serving at church, or serving at the family kongai. We're taught humility from a very young age.
Exactly.
Once you add that recipe, that extra ingredient of being discerning and being assertive, it's game over.
Oh,
because there's other cultures who don't learn humility until later. So I think humility is one of my favorite qualities, and it's for how do I say this? It takes a very strong person to be humble. Like, for example, you know you're right? You know you're right in an argument. You're with two other people, and you can obviously tell that they're in an emotional response system. So they're responding emotionally. They're not thinking. Humility is understanding that and just saying, okay, all right, let's move on from this, because you know you won't get your way. And that's not being a people pleaser or being kind. It's understanding the situation that you won't get a positive result. And those are the kinds of results you get or you receive when you remain a humble person.
Exactly.
And, Scripture is big on humility. It's the only way we can reach God. Only a humble heart can reach God. So and I'm so glad that it's deeply ingrained in Samoan culture. The way we teach it is quite different from how the West teaches it. It's like they teach us this is who does what in our family. This is our makai. This is know your place, serve the best in that place, and then they accept you and love you for that. So I'm so blessed to be Samoan. That's one of the reasons I'm so happy to grow up as Samoan, because I knew I was taught humility from a very young age. And now I'm older and I'm in the workspace. When things screw up all the time, whether it's clients, whether it's business partners, I'm just like, oh, okay, let's move on now. Like, that's what humility is. It's just like letting it go, and not to like you said about being passive, doing something with intention, and using the quality of humility to kind of elevate it, to push you forward to whatever your mission or vision is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things my mum taught me was, she says, never stop being a student. And what she meant by that is never stop being humble and open to learning. And she said, like, if you're humble enough, you can learn from anyone and anything. Right? If you're really humble, you can even learn from a little child. Children can teach you something.
Yes.
And that's why I go back to that example of my wife and I. Look at my daughter, creating the mess and stuff. In order for me to learn and have that eye-opening experience, I had to be humbled.
Yeah.
And hey, sometimes you are forced to be humble. But it's definitely much better when you choose to be humble.
Absolutely.
Right? But definitely having that, being humble is also a mindset as well.
Yeah.
Because it's being open to learn, because you don't know everything.
Yes. And I like what you said, you can learn from everyone. Because humble people are the type to shake the janitor's hand and the CEO's hand and treat everyone the same.
Exactly.
And they walk out probably the most productive person, because they've learned from everyone. Whereas if you don't have that mentality, you're just like, this person's important. You're blocking out so much things that you can learn.
Yeah, and I feel like it's more natural to be humble if you know how to love. And like in the scriptures, what is the greatest commandment, of all? What is the first and great commandment? Is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and soul. And second is like unto it, love thy neighbor as thyself. But it's love. It's love. And I feel like that if you're driven by love, this charity, you just want to serve, you want to help, you have empathy for someone when they're hurting, you want to support them, be the good Samaritan. I feel like humility and all these other good things just come naturally.
Yes.
If you just love. Yeah. And the thing about love is sometimes it's hard to love people who are being mean to you, or who are backlashing. But like especially with social media. But what does Jesus teach? Love thy enemies.
Yes.
Love thy neighbors.
Love your enemy
love thy enemies.
more than your friends.
So honestly, it's just the power of love, eh? And the thing about love, especially, Valentine's, and people are like, oh, love can get distorted, or the meaning of what real love can get distorted. And that's why I always go back to the scriptures around what is love. And it teaches us God is love. What does that mean? That's pretty deep. God is love. But then also in John 3:16, it says that, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. So one way that scripture defines love is giving.
Sacrifice as well.
Yeah. And so again, if you have love for someone, giving and serving and being humble and all that should just feel natural, eh? Yeah.
So beautiful. There's a lot of love in this, there's a lot of fear in this world as well. So it's always that constant battle between fear and love, that's going, and you can see it in politics, online, in the digital media space. Every conflict online, it's actually a battle of principles. It's people just fighting over principles. And you'll kind of say someone posts something controversial. You have a large amount of people who are hating, and you have a large amount of people who are agreeing and saying, no, this person has a right. And I think when you understand love and you understand God, you can start discerning who is showing love online, even through very cheeky or subliminal comments, and who's not showing love online. And it kind of simplifies life for me in a sense, because everything is it's like a spiritual war going on and there's good and bad, and it's trying to separate the two. Sorry, I just went on a rant there.
Yeah. No, but the thing about those challenges, and life is tough. We just live in an imperfect world.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of imperfect people. And there's pain, there's suffering.
Yes.
There's all of that. And then there's the stuff that happens in our own personal life. But I always come back to, it's better to fight adversity in the light than it is to fight adversity in the dark. What I meant by that is if you're living the gospel, staying true to your values, your beliefs, when challenges come, it's much more easy. I wouldn't say easier, but it's better to manage those challenges and stress in that when you're in the light. Versus if you're not living the gospel and those values and beliefs and your faith, you're not living it, when challenges come, it's harder to deal with those challenges. So what I'm trying to say is, you just focus on what you can control, and it's your choice and your faith and your values and your beliefs. And then when the challenges come, it should feel you're ready to face it. You're ready to face it and overcome it because you're in the light. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That made so much sense. Thank you for sharing that one. And I think that's such a beautiful way to end this episode. One more question. Any last words for our viewers?
I just come back to our mission as Zeducation, and we're all about helping people unleash their greatness. And it's because we believe that everybody has greatness. Whoever's listening, no matter what anybody's told you, no matter what you've heard, no matter what pain you've been through in life, you have greatness. Doesn't matter how old you are, where you're from, what challenges you've had in life, you have greatness. I had this opportunity to run a workshop a couple of years ago for the youth. It was a boot camp for youth, and these youth were troubled youth who were stuck between not being in school and no one wanting to hire them. And I ran this workshop around discovering your strengths. And I'll never forget this. These defining moments that you talked about earlier. All of them were so engaged in this workshop I was doing around discovering your strengths. But this one girl in particular started crying. And I said, everyone was worried, what's going on? Pussy, what did you do? And it's and then she basically shared, she's my whole life, I've always felt useless. I had a child when I was pregnant, when I was 13 years old. My brother took his own life. I wish I could have done something. But after doing this program or this workshop, I am good at something. I just realized I'm really good at listening. I'm really good at this. And for me, sometimes we just need that. We just need someone to tell us that we have potential, that there is good in us. And if there's anything I want to leave is that you do have greatness. No matter what's happened, trauma, no matter what anybody's told you, believe it. Believe that you have greatness.
Thank you so much, Pasi.